welcome to another beautiful episode with 365 Trading Academy. I appreciate you as usual. This is hosted by 365 Trading Academy, but this is, of course, the 365 Money Heist podcast. My camera is a bit off there for you guys on YouTube. Hope you don't mind. Really, the point is really more so that you can hear me read today's chapter to you. There's feedback in the background, right? Okay, so we're running live. Everything is good, right? So I appreciate all of you guys. I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you're learning. I hope this is adding, the type of value I imagined it would, add, when I started this project. I didn't know if it was going to be a good idea or a great idea. Shake my hand. Appreciate you. Man, you're up. Why are you awake? Shake my hand. I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in live. Right. So that's what it is. I'm committed to doing this for the rest of my life, every single day. I'm very obsessed about impact value, right? So I just want to know if I'm having an impact in people's lives, and I want that impact to be something that one day people will grow to desire, cherish, and spread, right? So we are doing the richest man of Babylon, and we are winding down to the end. To be very specific, today being Tuesday, we'll be finished with the book on Thursday. The last day of reading this book is Thursday. All right, so it was a fairly long, short book, all right, about 11 chapters, but the chapters were quite thick, and I absolutely enjoyed that about it. It was a childhood book for me. And honestly speaking, just going through with it again for this podcast has helped me quite a bit. I've been making extensive notes, by the way, for the first book, Science of Getting Rich, and then I'm going to find a way to distribute that. So maybe through an animated video that will kind of like structure. I'm going to hire someone to do that kind of stuff for me, though I don't have the skill set nor the time. Who will put together, lessons and summaries in like a 10-minute format, just so that we are all up to date with all the steps we need to take. The whole point of this is not only to learn, but to be very practical, to go and apply it, right? So it's a new month. Today is the 1st of February. My hope is if you've been following the podcast by now, today, you should have started your first 10% savings journey, right? Your first 10% from January income, if you have an income. But remember, saving 10% is nothing to do with a job. It has nothing to do with a fixed income. Saving 10% is simply, if someone gives you $10, $1 must go towards your future. If someone gives you $100, $10 must go towards your future. Your salary, 10% of that. If you're not used to it, if you have too many expenses, there are many other laws that we went through that would need your actual practical application and support. For example, I just want to quickly fix this. There we go. Right. For example, addressing the issue around the 7 cures of a lean press. The point is, you are only going to start building wealth when you start building wealth, right? So let's get on that. Right, so chapter 9 today is the clay tablets from Babylon. Chapter 9 today is the clay tablets from Babylon. Yesterday is chapter 8, by the way. If I ever get back to traveling around financial seminars, which seems to start in June, July. I was hoping to start a little bit later into the year, like August, but I do have 3 bookings in July already. It's something I normally spend the first day on. All right. Chapter 8 yesterday is something that I preferably like to spend an entire day on. And because statistically speaking, a lot of people are stuck in this world of debt. All right, so chapter 8, just a couple of quotations. Ill fortune pursues every man who thinks more about borrowing than repaying, right? More about borrowing than repaying. That's a very, very big thing, right? Ill fortune will always follow you. Being young and without experience, I did not know that he who spends more than he earns is sowing the winds of needless self-indulgence, from which he is sure to reap the whirlwinds of trouble and humiliation. So I indulge my whims for fine, remnant, and both luxuries for my good wife and our home beyond our means. It was very dangerous time. He was spending more than he could keep. He was not investing, and he would over borrow and not repay. And that stuff comes back. I mean, I am no stranger to the downs of financial lives. Like we've been kicked out. But when they kicked us out, back then, it wasn't just you're evicted, it was you're evicted and you can't live, you leave your furniture behind. So everything that we owned, every single possession, it was an illegal attachment, right? Because later on we found out that they should at least give us our beds, So I've been through a lot of those things around debt. The debt then was specifically failure to comply with rental payments because I had no money. I was broke. I was like completely waxed out. My trading at that particular time was close to zero, not doing extremely well. My living conditions for my trading psychology were absolutely terrible. I mean, there's so many things that happen, but at the center of it all, as long as I remember that I am responsible for where I am in life, the externals don't matter, right? So I had to quickly figure that stuff out. But debt is like a cancer, guys. We have to focus on that. In fact, the only thing I would suggest you do, if you're following the principles of science of getting rich and richest man of Babylon, is you do your 10% and then you focus on debt. You focus on removing the debt, right? So anyways, that's what we covered yesterday around, the issues of debt and how dangerous debt can be. And I think that was absolutely important, right? So now let's move to chapter 9 today, which is the clay tablets from Babylon. The clay tablets from Babylon. If I remember this chapter, there's like a back and forth of letters. It's the chapter with the letters, right? So we're going to read a couple of letters between someone and their so-called professor. We're going to learn some very important things. The clay tablets from Babylon, right? So you remember at the beginning of the book, Akkad is a scribe. All right, so all that stuff, they're wrapping the book up, they're going to tie it up together, right? So right at the beginning of the chapter 9, the clay tablets from Babylon is Nottingham University. The date is October the 21st, 1934. Second World War was about to end, right? So Hitler goes crazy again, and there's a Second World War up until 1935. But 1930s is quite significant. There's the Great Depression, which is the toughest time and one of the biggest world-class economic crashes, where Goldman Sachs emerges and actually gives a new shine inside of financial markets because they outbid the market and actually are part of a big resuscitation of the economy back then. 1935, we also have the introduction of Fordism, Fordism being a mode of regulation. So it was a new way for capitalism to operate, right? I'm just talking from what that year, so mass production, basically trying to create a big middle class, a big middle consumption class, right? Which is really what a lot of salesman tactics come from, right? Selling cheap to the masses, right? So get a bigger customer base. What else happened in 1935? Well, I'm sure we'll come up with more stuff. But anyway, this is in 1934. So the letter then starts. My dear professor, the 5 clay tablets from your recent excavation in the ruins of Babylon arrived on the boat with your letter. So someone excavated these tablets, or when you excavate, you get an archaeologist normally, and they dig, and they find these historical things. So they found the clay tablets. So this is a little bit now into the future from the days of Akkad, and they've excavated the tablets from Babylon. So the letter goes on to say, I've been fascinated no end, and I've spent many pleasant hours translating their inscriptions. I should have answered your letter at once, but delayed until I could complete the transactions with which were attached. The tablets arrived without damage, thanks to your careful use of preservatives and excellent packing. You will be astonished as we in the laboratory at the story they relate. One expects the dim, distant past to speak of romance and adventure, the Arabian Nights, sort of things, when instead it discloses the problem of the person named Dabasia, right? Dabasia is from the previous chapter, Dabasia to pay off his debts. One realizes that conditions upon this old world have not changed as much in 5,000 years as one might expect. So it's been 5,000 years in 1934, right? So, okay. It's odd, but these old inscriptions rather rag me, as the students say. Being called a professor, I'm supposed to be a thinking human being possessing a working world of knowledge of most subjects. Yet, here comes this old chap out of the dust-covered ruins of Babylon to offer a way I have never heard of to pay off my debts and at the same time acquire gold to jingle in my wallet. A pleasant thought, I say, and an interesting to prove whether it will work as well as nowadays as it did in old Babylon. Mrs. Shrewsbury and myself are planning to try out his plan upon our own affairs, which could be much improved. This is important. Wishing you the best of luck in your worthy undertaking and waiting eagerly another opportunity to assist. I am yours sincerely, Alfred H. Shrewsbury, Department of Archaeology. So this is tablet 1 from 5,000 years ago in 1934. Tablet 1. Now when the moon becometh full, I, the Bazier, who am but recently returned from slavery in Syria, with the determination to pay, right? And I'm sorry to keep making sound bites, right? But number one, I'm not as tired as I normally am. Number two is I'm trying to connect things as we wrap up this book. In chapter 8, he says, look, man, the only thing that stops you in general is determination, right? If you tell yourself, come hell or no high water, I'm going to pay off these debts, you're going to pay off these debts. Like today, I was talking to traders and I was telling them, you know, not a lot, but some of them are holding a potentially brilliant trade. But you only know it was potentially brilliant a month from now, right? They're in Nasdaq, they're going to clean good buys from yesterday, today, etc. And some are in, some are just thinking about it, some want to get in. And the point is, there's a little bit of determination, right? The determination needs to be reinforced with discipline, right? So the Bazier was teaching the young guy owed him money in chapter 8 that when determination is, the way can be found, right? No matter what, a way can be found. So he says, look, I've come back from Syria slave with the determination to pay my many just debts and become a man of means worthy of respect in my native city of Babylon. Do ye here engrave upon the clay a permanent record of my affairs to guide and assist me in trying through my high desires. Under the wise advice of my good friend Marthon, the gold lender, I am determined to follow an exact plan that he doth say will lead an honorable man out of debt into means and self-respect. This plan included 3 purposes, which are my hope and desire. First, the plan doth provide for my future prosperity. So number 1, future prosperity. Therefore, 1/10. You know, when these guys, these brilliant authors who have lived this life and are not writing a fantasy novel, keep repeating a point, I want you to know they are emphasizing something important. The very first step in his grand plan is number 1, I need to protect the future of my prosperity. Therefore, 1/10 of all I earn shall be set aside as my own to keep. For Matthew speaketh wisely when he saith, that man who keepeth in his purse both gold and silver, that he need not spend his good to his family and loyal to his king. The man who hath but a few coppers in his purse is indifferent to his family and indifferent to the king. But the man who hath nothing in his purse is unkind to his family and is disloyal to his king, for his own heart is bitter, right? So if you're broke, unfortunately, it's got terrible effects on those around you, right? Therefore, the man who wisheth to achieve must have coin, that he may keep to jingle in his purse, and that he have in his heart love for his family and loyalty for his kin. I mean, if you have kids, you should see how stressed you are and how you just talk in the house like, yeah, leave me alone, I'm stressed out, I need to go work. It's just small things like that, but the problem is they are pointing to the root problems in your life, right? You need to continuously have money. The best way to do that is to secure your future now, guys. 10% rule. Second, the plan doth provide that I shall support and clothe my good wife, who hath returned to me with loyalty from my house of her father. For Matthew doth say that to take care of a faithful wife putteth self-respect into the heart of a man and added strength and determination to his purpose. Therefore, 7/10 of all I earn shall be used to provide a home, clothes to wear, and food to eat, and with a bit extra to spend, that our lives be not lacking in pleasure and enjoyment. He doth further enjoy the greatest care that we spend not greater than 7/10 of what I earn for those worthy purposes, Wherein lieth the success of the plan, I must live upon this portion and never use more, nor buy what I may not pay for out of this portion. So now we've got this map. Let's say in $10, whatever it is out of a percentage. 70%, he says, take care of your house, take care of your family, take care of the standard of living that you can afford. Make it pleasurable so that it is important that you value what it is that you're doing. If you have a family around you, take care of them, right? It's called pay yourself first. Waking up in the morning is much more exciting to get onto the hustle if you're enjoying the fruits of your labor, right? So you've got 7 out of 10 going towards that, and you've got 1 out of 10 going towards your debt, all right? I feel like we're literally all on the same page there. Right, now, tablet number 2, I believe, is the next one. So let me make sure I read everything on tablet number 2, on tablet 1. But he got further enjoy the greatest care we spend no greater than 7 tenths. Yeah, I did. So tablet number 2. Third, the plan doth provide that out of my earnings, my debts shall be paid. So there'll be no magic money to pay off your debts. That's another thing I did as a terrible mistake back then. I kept waiting to increase my income. Debt was bad, very bad, but I had social capital to some extent. I was a nice guy, and because of that, a lot of people understood my situation, which was good. And so it bought me time. But as the longer, more time I got, which was them being kind to me, which was the kindness I needed at that time, but I didn't have the right mindset to use that kindness appropriately. What I did do was almost ignore the debt because people would be nice and understanding. Number 1. Number 2, my income could only do what it could do. So it could only sustain us. It could feed us. It could forget about clothes. It could do the basic, minimum basics, like just get us from point A to B, right? Everything, standards of living completely collapsed. Everything was being sold left, right, and center. First the cars go, then the motorbikes, then you blow another trading account, then that has to go, and then the loan to refund, and then you're in trouble, so you have to sell the furniture. And things just started to leave bit by bit. But over and above, the cure, the principle in here is from what you believe is little. It is little, it can only do little. There is your solution. The seed for your solution is in this. Start to sacrifice now. And he says, and I'll read it again, doth provide that out of my earnings, my debts shall be paid. Therefore, each time the moon is full, so after a month, 2/10 of all I have earned shall be divided honorably, fairly among those who have trusted me and to whom I am indebted. Thus, in due time, with all my indebtedness will be surely paid. Therefore, do I engrave the name of every man to whom I am indebted and honest about my debt. One night, I was so stressed a couple of years ago, and then my partner brought a book. She loves diaries. I mean, it's just this you should see our actual home office. It's ridiculous. On her desk, it's just notebooks of different things. She created a debt notebook and told me, let's sit down and let's list every single human being that we owe money, how much we owe them, and slowly but surely see who we can cancel. Back then, it was I didn't do it this way. So what I did was I targeted one person at a time, just so I was in a rush to cancel names, right? And other financial practitioners actually have a better hack. There's a better hack. You want to get debt collection or debt redemption or debt payoffs into a reward system habit for yourself. And the best way to do that is to take the most money you can sacrifice and throw it at all the smallest amounts that you owe. So the little debts that if you owe someone $5, $10, $20, $30, and $500, you want to smoke all those small monies first with the biggest bang. And then moving forward, you want to have a consistent set amount. In here, it's 2/10 of your income towards that big giant, just consistently just slicing it. When I registered for my PhD, and my supervisor was explaining to me that, as much as I've got a lot of things going on, I have to just think about my PhD as an elephant. So there's a saying that goes, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is you can't just sit down and just destroy it, right? It's one slice at a time. Every single day, just come back for that slice. One day it disappears. So commitment Writing your debts down so it becomes an actual plan. There is power when your neuroconnectivity actually sees you make the discipline to write stuff down on paper, especially if you don't type it, but write it down on paper. It's a solid commitment, right? So we've got a list here of the Basia's, debts. If you guys want to hear it, I will probably butcher most of these names. I mean, there's Faro, the cloth weaver, 2 silver, 6 copper. Senja, the couch maker, 1 silver. Ama, my friend, 3 silver, 1 copper. Zaka, my friend, 4 silver, 7 copper. Askima, I don't know, my friend, 1 silver, 3 copper. Hansa, the jewel maker, 6 silver, 2 copper. Dabakia, my father's friend, 4 silver, 1 copper. Alkahat, the house owner, rent, 14 silver. Rent is such a problem. Mathon, the gold lender, 9 silver, etc., etc., etc. Right, so tablet 3. To these creditors do I owe in total 119 pieces of silver and 141 pieces of copper. Because I did owe these sums and saw no way to repay in my folly, I did permit my wife to return to her father and did leave my native city to seek easier wealth elsewhere, only to find disaster and to see myself sold in the degradation of slavery. Now that Mathon doth show me how I can repay my debts and small sums of my earnings, I do realize the great extent of my folly in running away from the result of my extravagances. Therefore, I have visited my creditors and explained to them that I have no resources with him to pay except my ability to earn, that I intend to apply 2/10 of all I earn upon my indebtedness evenly and honestly. This much I can pay, but no more. Therefore, if they be patient in time, my obligations will be paid in full. Amma, whom I thought my best friend, reviled me bitterly, and I left him in humiliation. Berejek, the farmer, pleaded that I pay him first as he did badly need help. Alcott, the house owner, was indeed disagreeable and insisted that he would make me trouble unless I did soon settle in full with him. All the rest willingly accepted my proposal. Therefore, I am more determined than ever to carry through, being convinced that it is easier to pay one's debts than avoid them. Even though I cannot meet the needs and the diamonds of a few of my creditors, I would deal impartially with all, right? So that's quite an important thing. A debt plan and the reality of the people you owe are always two different things, right? So some of these people did not want the slow term payments. They wanted their money back ASAP. He's got bad credit with them, right? He's lost faith and trust, but it's all part of life. At least you're going to get something. And that's kind of like the best way to negotiate with people that you owe money. Again, the moon shines full. I've worked hard. This is tablet 4. Again, the moon shines full. I've worked hard with my free hand. My good wife had supported my intentions to pay my creditors because of our wise determination. I have earned during the past moon, buying camels of sound wind and good legs for Nebuchadnezzar, the sum of 19 pieces of silver. This I have divided according to my plan. 1/10 savings into invest, 7/10 for the house, 2/10 to pay debt. 1/10 I've set aside to keep as my own, 7/10 I divided with my good wife to pay for our living, 2/10 have I divided among my creditors as evenly as could be done in the coppers. I did not see Amma, but left it with his wife. But Jake was pleased he would kiss my hand. Old Akkad alone was grouchy and said I must pay faster, to which I replied that if I were permitted to be well fed and not worried, that alone would enable me to pay faster. All the others thanked me and spoke well of my efforts. Therefore, at the end of one moon, my indebtedness is reduced by almost 4 pieces of silver, and I possess almost 2 pieces of silver besides, upon which no man hath claim. My heart is lighter than it hath been for a long time. Again, the moon shines full. I have worked hard, but with poor success. Few camels have I been able to buy. Only 11 pieces of silver have I earned. Nevertheless, my good wife and I have stood by the plan, even though We have bought no new raiment and eaten little but herbs. Again, I paid ourselves 1/10 of the 11 pieces while we lived upon the 7/10. I was surprised when Alma commended my payment, even though small. So did Brejeki. Alcad flew into a rage, but when told to give back his portion if he did not wish it, he became reconciled. The others, as before, were content. Again, the moon shines full, and I'm greatly rejoiced. I anticipated a fine herd of camels and bought many sound ones. Therefore, my earnings were 42 pieces of silver. This moon, my wife and myself have bought much needed sandals and raiment. Also, we have dined well on meat and fowl. More than 8 pieces of silver we have paid to our creditors. Even Alcott did not protest. Great is the plan, for it leadeth us out of debt and giveth us wealth, which is ours to keep. 3 times the moon had been full since I last carved upon this clay. Each time I paid myself 1/10 of all I earned. Each time my good wife and I have lived upon 7/10, even though at times it was difficult. Each time I've paid to my creditors 2/10 in my purse. I now have 21 pieces of silver that are mine. It maketh my head to stand straight on my shoulders. It maketh me proud to walk among my friends. My wife keepeth well our home and is becoming gowned. We are happy to live together. The plan is untold value. Hath it not made an honorable man an ex-slave, right? So basically the tablets are his diaries. He comes back every month to catch up with his debt plan. Tablet number 5, again, which is probably the 5th moon or the 6th moon, because we did skip 3 moons earlier on. So whenever it was. Again, the moon shines full, and I remember that it is long since I carved upon the clay. 12 moons in truth have come and gone. So that's a year. But this day I will not neglect my record, because upon this day I have paid the last of my debts. This is my day upon which my good wife and my thankful self celebrate with great feasting that our determination had been achieved. Many things occurred upon my final visit to my creditors that I shall long remember. Alma begged my forgiveness for his unkind words and said that I was one of all others he must desire for a friend. Old Arcad is not so bad after all, for he said, thou wert once a piece of soft clay to be pressed and molded by any hand that touched thee, but now thou art a piece of bronze capable of holding an age. If thou needest silver or gold any time, come to me. Right? So the same guy who was very angry about how much he owed is now willing to even borrow him. Nor is he the only one who holdeth me in high regard. Many others speak differentially to me. My good wife looketh upon me with a light in her eyes that doth make a man have confidence in himself. Yet it is the plan that hath made my success. It hath enabled me to pay all my debts and to jingle both gold and silver in my purse. I do commend it to all who wish to get ahead, for truly, if it will enable an ex-slave to pay his debts and have gold in his purse, will it not aid any man to find independence? Nor am I myself finished with it, for I am convinced that if I follow it further, it will make me a rich among men. You remember in chapter 8, his slave master's wife asked him, are you a slave or a free man? And this is what he's referring to, right? True freedom comes from being debt free. All right, so we got a snippet of what the 5 tablets have, and then now a new letter is the next page, on page 152. Professor Franklin, Caldwell, care of British Scientific Expedition. My dear Professor, if in your further digging into those ruins of Babylon you encounter the ghost of a former resident, an old camel trader named Dabasia, do me a favor, tell him that his scribbling upon those clay tablets so long has earned for him the lifelong gratitude of a couple of college folks back here in England. He will possibly remember my writing a year ago that Mrs. Shrewsbury and myself intended to try this plan for getting out of debt and at the same time having gold to jiggle. So just so we're clear, guys, this letter was written on the 7th of November, 1936. The first letter was written in 1934, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the first was in 1934. So it's been 2 years, and this professor has actually tried these principles, right? He's tried the 5 tablets, the lessons in the 5 tablets about how to divide your money. So he's saying, look, man, it's been 2 years, and just so you know, that stuff is golden. It worked. And we're out of it. Me and my wife, Miss Shrewsbury, and myself intend to try this plan for getting out of debt and at the same time having gold to jingle. You may have guessed, even though we tried to keep it from our friends, our desperate straits, we were frightfully humiliated for years by a lot of old debts, worried sick for fear some of the tradespeople might start a scandal that would force me out of college. We paid and paid every shilling we could squeeze out of income, but it was very hardly enough to hold things even. Besides, we were forced to do all by buying where we could get further credit, regardless of higher costs. It developed into one of those vicious cycles that grow worse instead of better. Our struggles were getting hopeless. We could not move to less costly rooms because we owed the landlord. They did not appear to be anything we could do to improve our situation. Then here comes your acquaintance, the old camel trader from Babylon, with a plan to do just what we wish to accomplish. He jolly well steered us to follow his system. We made a list of all our debts, and I took it round and showed it to everyone we owed. I explained how it was slightly impossible for me to ever pay them the way things were going along. They could readily see this themselves from the figures. Then I explained that the only way I saw to pay in full was to set aside 20% of my income each month to be divided pro rata, which would pay them in full in a little over 2 years. That in the meantime, we would go on a cash basis and give them further benefit of our cash purchases. They were really quite decent. Our greengrocer was a wise old chap, put it in a way that helped to bring about the rest. If you pay for all you buy and then pay some on what you owe, that is better than you have done, for he payeth down the account none in the last 3 years. Finally, I secured all their names to an agreement binding them not to molest us as long as the 20% of income was paid regularly. Then we began scheming on how to live upon 70%. We were determined to keep that extra 10% to jingle. The thought of silver and possible gold was most alluring. It was like having an adventure to make the change. We hoped, figuring this way and that, to live comfortably upon that remaining 70%. We started with rent and managed to secure a fair reduction. Next, we put our favorite brands of tea and such under suspicion, and were agreeably surprised how often we could purchase superior qualities at less cost. It is too long a story for a letter, but how it did not prove difficult. It was not hard. We managed, and right cheerfully at that. What a relief to have our affairs in such shape. We are no longer persecuted by past due accounts. I must not neglect, however, to tell about the extra 10% we were supposed to jingle. Well, we did jingle it for some time. We don't laugh too soon. You see, that is the very sporty part. It is real fun to start accumulating money that you do not want to spend. There is more pleasure in running up a surplus than there is in spending it. I mean, I couldn't agree more. My most favorite times in the market is going to buy stocks, crypto, NFTs. I buy a bit, but I'm not yet fully in it. I mean, I understand it completely and I like it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm quite a classic guy. So it takes me a little bit of time to quickly jump onto the next big hot trade. But I very much love reinvesting my funds. I love paying myself. The idea that there is a future where my right now is good, but my future could be 10 times better is exhilarating. And also, I was kind of like raised by my parents, but my old man's words still stick today. He used to say something crazy. It's not crazy, it's actually a scripture. It says the righteous man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so that's kind of like the thing that got me stuck at about the age of 25. I was like, damn, children's children, right? So it's one thing to be able to put your kids at private school. It's another thing to make sure that you can also put your grandkids in private school in the event that your kids can't do it, which they should be able to do it. But it's your job as this kind of the lead of the generation that you're in right now for your family to provide an inheritance for your children's children. And there's a lot of pleasure for me over time. I am 10 times more addicted to buying a new coin that might go flat or up than I am in buying a car. Cars no longer excite me. I'm 10 times more addicted to buying another property to add to the kids' trust than fancy stuff. I mean, I don't even do lifestyle content, so let me just shut up about that kind of stuff. But anyways, the point here is, the professor is saying, look, man, I started to get excited. It became real fun. It became a sport to start accumulating money that you did not want to spend. There is more pleasure in running up such a surplus than there could be in spending it. After we jiggled to our heart's content, we found a more profitable use of it. We took upon an investment which we would pay that 10% each month. So they put the 10% in there. This is proven to be the most satisfying part of our regeneration. It is the first thing we pay out of my check. There is a most gratifying sense of security to know our investments are growing steadily. By the time my teaching days are over, it would be a snug sum, large enough so the income will take care of us from then on. All this out of the same old check. Difficult to believe, yet absolutely true. All our debts being paid gradually, at the same time our investments increasing. There we go. So doing both with the little that you have. Besides, we get along financially even better than before. Who would believe that could be such a difference in resulting being following a financial plan and just drifting along? At the end of next year, when all our old bills shall have been paid, we'll have more to pay upon our investments besides some extra travel. We're determined never again to permit our living expenses to exceed 70% of our income. Now you can understand why we would like to extend our personal thanks to that old chap whose plan saved us from our hell on earth. He knew he had been through it all. He wanted others to benefit from his own better experiences. The whole point of the podcast is to make sure we make an impact and that other people get to benefit benefit from a lot of my own bitter experiences. Now, that is why he spent tedious hours carving his message upon the clay. He had a real message for fellow sufferers, a message so important that after 5,000 years, it has risen out of the ruins of Babylon, just as true and just as vital as the day it was buried, right? So yours sincerely, Alfred H. Salisbury, Department of Archaeology. And that is the end of chapter 9, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for chilling with me. Thank you for listening in on Spotify. I appreciate you. Just a wild thought. After you follow this plan and you're done with your debt, you are psychologically wired that you live out of 70%, 7 out of 10, 7/10 of your money, because 2/10 was always going to your debt, 1/10 was going to your future investments. But when the debt is done, you could actually, and you probably have no choice. I would argue that it makes so much more sense that whatever you're throwing in at that 1/10 investment, you triple it, and now 3/10 go towards you paying yourself first, paying towards your future, while maintaining an amicable standard of 7/10 to your current and progressive lifestyles, right? So I'm not saying stay in a 1-bedroom flat for the rest of your life. I'm simply saying understand where you are financially. But yeah, I don't want to talk for too long. It's been a beautiful reading. I appreciate you. Tomorrow is Wednesday. We'll be doing chapter 10, which is the luckiest man of Babylon. And then on Thursday, sad as it is, we'll be calling an end to the book as we look at a very short chapter, chapter 11, which is actually quite an interesting, historical graphic of Babylon. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we will then be moving towards our third book. I've got all our books and I've already started making notes, for the podcast, and by tomorrow I'll have made up my mind in terms of themes, right? Building up each thing. I'm quite split between these two books. So I would like us to either look at Dr. Joseph Murphy. Joseph did his PhD in an entire PhD in wealth building. So I've got all these copies. I've got Think Yourself Rich by Joseph Murphy. I've got Mental Antidotes, probably by the bookshelf, it's not next to me right here. Mental Antidotes, The Poisons of the Minds. But I'm also thinking about getting into Happy Money by Ken Honda as book number 3 next. So I'll have to really just think through. And then after that, I think we'll have done enough of very abstract level books so far. I think Science of Getting Rich, Richest Man of Babylon, and one of these two will have done enough to then get into what I'm going to call a Napoleon Hill teaching series. Now, let me tell you a quick story, just a quick story. Now, repeat the story later on. This is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This book is brilliant. It's sold over 10 million copies. It's it's a classic. I've already bought another clean copy for my son who's 7 to get it one day in the future. So it's a little gift thing that we're creating for the kids. And for my daughter as well. It's a classic. It's a must read. But Napoleon Hill, when he was told by the richest man in the world, Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was this multi-billionaire in the 1920s, 1918s in the steel industry in America back then. And he told Napoleon Hill, go and do your research, man. Go sit down and talk to the richest people in the world and figure out how they're doing a certain way, how they're getting rich. So figure it out. Do a whole research. It took Napoleon Hill 20 years to put together this. But what a lot of people don't know is this is not the original book of Think and Grow Rich, the one that you're buying right now, right? So they have this group of people called Masons, Freemasons, Masonaries across the world. They operate in lodges. People speculate the stuff that they do. It's not Illuminati, it's very different. I'm speaking fast because it's the end of the podcast. Right, so now Freemasons, guys, are guardians of knowledge passed on from time to time. My little brother is doing his level 2 with the Freemasons. So that's all I'm going to say, right? There is 36 levels. I would love to join them because I love knowledge and information, but I don't have time. So maybe 2 years from now, I will then, become a student there. But the point is, now, the Masonry stuff goes way back. It's like those classic Rockefeller rich families that go way back in time, way back. In the town I'm in Grahamstown, there's a masonry hall, an actual masonry hall, right? So it turns out when Napoleon Hill's book was about to come out in the 1970s, the very first book, Think and Grow Rich, Henry Ford, the guy who created Ford, right? People know Ford, the car, but you can also talk from a socio-economic level. You're talking about Fordism because he literally changed how rapid capitalism became on a global scale by introducing the assembly line, which changed how people work and also increased global output. Was okay with paying high wages and also created a new class structure for capitalism. We'll talk about all these fun things, another time. But the point is, Henry Ford back then was part of the Masons, right? And he did not want this information coming out. And so he literally fought and they collided against Napoleon Hill. And removed a lot of things. I mean, if you give me a chance to actually tell, I don't want to waste your time. But the point is, I could not for 3 years get the original copy of the book that preceded Think and Grow Rich, which is called The 16 Laws of Success. And I finally have it. It's 1,000 pages. Think and Grow Rich is 300 pages. Right? Think and Grow Rich is only 300 pages, and it's a good book. If you have this book, the stuff in here is brilliant. I've lived and breathed off this stuff, but I could never. Oh, look at this. This copy that I'm busy playing around was okay. No, it's my copy. I thought it was the copy that my father gifted me a while back as well. Imagine this book. being the watered down version. And this book has changed my life and many lives. And then imagine what the actual original manuscript is going to have. So I would like us in the podcast to sit through the 16 Laws of Success, but it's a big reader. It's a 1,000-page reader. I have finally found a place where I can actually buy a physical copy. It's very expensive, but we need it here in the podcast. And so as soon as shipping is done and I get a copy, we will be in the middle of doing, one of these two books that I just read out, and then we would then jump onto that. I would far much more rather read that version first with you, because it'll be the first time I'm going through it as well, and then jump onto Think and Grow Rich, which is apparently the watered down version, which is phenomenal, right? If you've just read Think and Grow Rich, then in your hands is phenomenal power. But I want us to read the original version that was removed off the shelves in 1918 and kept a secret, and guarded by what is known as the Napoleon Hill Foundation, right? Which they've been around and still are in operation, even though most of these old guys are dead. Right, guys? I appreciate you. I know I was mumbling and got too excited. It's just that when payment went through and I actually got confirmation that I'd found the original manuscript and it was being shipped to Africa, I got so excited. I got very, very excited. So I can't wait to do that on the podcast. It will be the longest series we've done. But guys, in there is everything that we need to know, right? Shake my hand, everybody. I appreciate you one more time. Thank you for listening. Have a good night, man. Thank you for tuning in. And I'll see you tomorrow for another episode. Goodbye. Peace. Bye-bye.